When we look closely at society, we notice something peculiar. It is built not only upon stone and steel, but upon stories, agreements, and shared illusions. People live and move in rhythms that are shaped less by what is absolutely true and more by what is collectively believed. A nation exists because people believe in borders drawn on a map. A currency has value because people agree it has value. Authority is respected because the majority treat it as sacred. These illusions are not inherently bad. They allow millions of individuals to cooperate, to trust one another, to engage in trade, to build institutions, and to live without constant chaos. But the intelligent person is like a mirror held up to these illusions, reflecting their fragility, and this act alone unsettles the collective mind. What intelligence does is pierce through appearances. Where others see permanence, it notices impermanence. Where others see unquestionable traditions, it perceives rituals that were once invented by human hands, no more timeless than the changing of fashion. This piercing gaze is not comfortable for the herd. Most people want stability, they want certainty, they want to feel that the foundations of their world are solid. But the intelligent mind cannot pretend for long. It asks questions such as, why do we believe in this? Who benefits from this story? What happens if we no longer agree to play along? These questions are dynamite placed beneath the delicate scaffolding of collective illusions. Imagine a society where everyone unquestioningly bows before a symbol, be it a flag, a crown, or even a sacred idea. For most, bowing is easier than asking why. It gives a sense of belonging, a sense of safety in the crowd. But the intelligent person sees through the symbol. They see that the crown is a piece of metal, the flag is dyed fabric, the sacred idea is a human thought dressed in the robes of eternity. And once they speak this truth aloud, everyone around them feels a tremor. For if the symbol is not absolute, then the foundation of their obedience is shaken, and with it the security of the entire group. This is why intelligence so often appears dangerous. It does not destroy with fire or sword. It destroys with clarity. It shows people that the emperor has no clothes, that the rules are inventions, that the boundaries we worship are lines drawn in sand. And yet, the majority do not want to see this. The illusion, though fragile, is comforting. It gives meaning to lives that might otherwise feel empty. It gives structure to the chaos of existence. To have that comfort threatened is not felt as liberation, but as terror. And so the intelligent person who simply reveals what is already there is cast as a threat, a troublemaker, or even an enemy of order. You can see this throughout history. Socrates questioned the cherished beliefs of Athens, and they condemned him. Galileo looked beyond the earth and found that the sun did not orbit us, and he was silenced. Philosophers, mystics, poets, thinkers, all who dared to reveal the illusion for what it was, were often ridiculed, punished, or ignored. The reaction is not new, it is woven into the very psychology of collective existence. People fear that without illusions, everything will fall apart. They fear that without unquestioned rules, chaos will devour them. And yet, what they do not realize is that the world has always been chaos, only carefully painted over with symbols, rituals, and agreements. The intelligent person, then, is not one who delights in tearing down for the sake of destruction. Rather, they see what is real beneath the painted mask. They notice that society's gods, idols, and structures are not eternal truths, but temporary arrangements. They see that morality is often shaped not by cosmic law, but by convenience, by power, by the needs of the collective. And this recognition makes others profoundly uneasy. To admit that laws are human inventions is to admit they could be changed. To admit that money has value only because of belief is to admit that the entire economy rests on a story. To admit that authority depends on obedience is to admit that the crowd holds more power than the rulers they fear. These recognitions are liberating to some, but terrifying to many. So the intelligent person walks through life as a living reminder that what we take to be absolute may not be absolute at all. Their presence challenges the herd not because they intend to, but because they cannot help but see through the veil. And once someone sees through the veil, it is impossible to unsee. They are forever estranged from the comfort of blind belief. And those still clinging to illusions instinctively feel the danger of such eyes among them, eyes that see too much. Eyes that remind them that the ground beneath their feet may not be as solid as they hoped. The machinery of society depends on predictability. It requires human beings to behave like gears in a great engine, each turning in rhythm with the others, each doing what is expected, each fulfilling its assigned role. This is not necessarily born of cruelty. It is the nature of collective survival. Order must be maintained, rules must be followed, structures must be preserved. And so, From the very beginning, every child is carefully shaped to fit into this vast system. Schools are not merely places of learning, they are factories of obedience. Workplaces are not simply environments for productivity, they are temples of conformity. Families, religions, and governments all whisper the same command in different words: do not stray too far from the path. Yet the intelligent person finds this rhythm suffocating. They cannot help but ask questions that unsettle the very foundations of this arrangement. Why must I think this way? Why must I behave as others behave? Why must I pursue what everyone else is pursuing? To conform is to wear a mask, and the intelligent mind grows restless behind it. They sense the absurdity of living an entire life merely as a cog, merely as a repeat performance of what has been done countless times before. This refusal to conform does not arise from arrogance. It is not rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It is simply that the intelligent mind sees more. It perceives the invisible strings that guide behavior, the subtle conditioning that shapes desires, the quiet pressure that makes people fear standing alone. And once you see these strings, it becomes nearly impossible to pretend they do not exist. The person of intelligence feels compelled to test them, to tug at them, to ask whether they must truly remain tied down. Society, however, does not take kindly to such experiments. Nonconformity is perceived as a threat. Imagine a room full of people all standing in line, waiting patiently because they believe this is the only way forward. Then one person steps out of line. They wander to the side, sit on the ground, or perhaps walk in the opposite direction. Suddenly, everyone else becomes unsettled. Their orderly patience is exposed as voluntary. The illusion of necessity is shattered. If one person can step out of line, then everyone can, and so, to maintain order, the group rushes to correct or punish the nonconformist. This is why intelligent people are feared. They are reminders of possibilities that most people would rather forget. They show by their very refusal to conform that obedience is not inevitable, that the supposed boundaries of life are not laws of nature but constructions of habit. Their freedom is a mirror that reflects back to others their own lack of it, and that mirror can be unbearable to look at. Consider how many structures of daily life exist not because they are natural, but because they are convenient for those in power. Social hierarchies, traditions, expectations about success and failure, all of these are fragile agreements. They survive only so long as the majority believes in them. The intelligent person, by questioning these beliefs, exposes their fragility. To those invested in maintaining control, this is intolerable. A free, thinking individual cannot be easily controlled, cannot be easily manipulated, cannot be easily frightened into submission. There is also a more subtle dimension to this. When someone refuses to conform, it reveals to others just how much of their own identity is borrowed. Most people wear personalities like uniforms, stitched together from the expectations of parents, teachers, bosses, and culture. They rarely stop to ask, who am I outside of these borrowed patterns? But the intelligent mind cannot ignore such a question. In their refusal to wear the uniform, they stand as a living challenge to everyone who does. Their very presence whispers, are you truly yourself, or merely the echo of what others demanded you become? This question is unsettling because it dismantles the illusion of safety. Conformity provides comfort. It allows one to hide within the crowd, to avoid the terror of being exposed, of being judged, of being truly responsible for one's choices. To break free from conformity is to step into uncertainty, into the raw and unpredictable flow of life. The intelligent person does not always step into this freedom joyfully. It is often lonely, often difficult, but they cannot pretend that the crowd's safety is real. They know it is only a disguise, a collective performance designed to protect against the fear of standing alone. Thus, the refusal to conform becomes a kind of quiet rebellion. It is not loud, not always visible, and not always dramatic. Sometimes it is simply the refusal to accept shallow answers, or the unwillingness to chase after what everyone else is chasing. Sometimes it is a gentle smile in the face of pressure, or a silent departure from the expected path. Yet even these small gestures unsettle the collective, for they reveal the thinness of the veil. In this way, intelligence does not merely refuse conformity, it exposes the cost of conformity itself. It shows that the price of fitting in is often nothing less than the loss of one's authenticity, the silencing of one's curiosity, the surrender of one's freedom to explore life in its vastness. And once this is seen, there is no going back. At the heart of it all, intelligent people frighten society not merely because they think differently, not because they are cleverer with words or quicker in logic, but because they radiate a certain quality that cannot be pinned down: freedom. True intelligence is not the memorization of facts or the clever manipulation of numbers. It is the ability to see through appearances, to pierce the veil of conventions and recognize the game for what it truly is. And once the game is seen, it can never again be taken seriously. This is what unsettles the crowd. For the majority live as though the game were reality itself, as though money, status, politics, or even identities were absolutes written into the fabric of existence. To question this is to shake the ground on which they stand. Imagine a person who suddenly stops playing by the usual rules. Everyone else is caught in the drama of competition, of striving endlessly for approval, security, and control. Yet here is one who laughs at the seriousness of it all, who treats the conventions as though they were costumes in a play. Such a presence becomes unbearable because it holds up a mirror to the absurdity of our attachments. It shows us that what we cling to as necessity may be nothing more than habit, and what we defend as truth may simply be fear in disguise. To witness such freedom is to feel the uneasiness of knowing we could also step outside the game. But to do so would unravel everything we depend upon. The fear of freedom is ancient and deep, for freedom is not merely the ability to do whatever one pleases. It is the recognition that there is no ultimate authority dictating how we must live. There is no final script handed down from the heavens, no invisible referee keeping score. To be truly free means to awaken to the fact that existence itself is open, fluid, without a fixed center. And this realization can be terrifying because it takes away the comforting illusion that someone else is in charge. Without the parent-like figure of authority, whether it is society, government, tradition, or even the idea of destiny, we are left with the unsettling awareness that we must take responsibility for our own lives. This is why intelligence unsettles the masses. For most would rather trade freedom for certainty, responsibility for comfort, and truth for reassurance. It is far easier to submit to systems, to authorities, to ideologies, than to bear the weight of standing alone in an open universe. The intelligent person, however, refuses to lean on such illusions. They see the structures, yes, but they see them as constructs, temporary agreements rather than eternal laws. And by not taking them too seriously, they expose the fear hidden within the crowd, the fear that perhaps nothing stands beneath us but the abyss of choice, that perhaps life has no meaning other than the one we create. Notice how society reacts to such people. Sometimes with ridicule, sometimes with suspicion, sometimes even with violence. For to mock them or suppress them is easier than to face the discomfort they awaken within us. If someone is dismissed as eccentric, arrogant, or even dangerous, then the responsibility of hearing their message disappears. We can push them to the margins, call them outcasts, and return to the comforting illusion that the rules we follow are solid and unquestionable. But deep down, there lingers a haunting recognition that the intelligent one has glimpsed something real, something we secretly sense but dare not confront. Think of the figures throughout history who unsettled their societies simply by speaking freely. They asked questions that no one wanted asked, they pointed out contradictions, they revealed hypocrisies. Many of them were ignored, exiled, or even executed. Not because they were violent, but because they threatened the dream. Their very existence revealed that the prison walls were not locked from the outside, that the door had always been open. And this is the most terrifying truth of all, that the chains we feel around our wrists are, in fact, chains we hold tightly ourselves. Freedom, when seen clearly, is not a comfort but a challenge. It strips away excuses, exposes illusions, and demands authenticity. Most people are not afraid of intelligence itself, but of what it reveals, that life has no safety net, that the future is not guaranteed, and that there is no final authority to tell us who we are or what we must do. To awaken to this truth is to stand in the raw, naked immediacy of existence, where every step is uncertain and every choice is our own. And so, society prefers conformity, for conformity dulls this terror. It allows us to share in a collective dream where responsibility is outsourced and freedom remains an abstract word rather than a living reality. The intelligent person, however, cannot unknow what they have seen. Once you recognize the play, you cannot pretend it is not a play. And this is why their presence is so unsettling. They are reminders, living symbols of the freedom that everyone secretly fears. They stand as proof that the rules are not unbreakable, that the structures are not eternal, that the only true authority lies within the mystery of being itself. Their intelligence is not a weapon, but a mirror. And when the crowd looks into that mirror, they do not see the intelligent one. They see their own chains, their own fear, their own refusal to step beyond the safety of illusion.